Last thing for chapter 6 is indirect commands. And if you want to look at these as we go along or afterwards, you've got indirect command charts on page 30 and 31. All right, review. Imperative mood. That's the one you know. It's a direct second person command that uses the indicative mood. And that's direct command. You walk the dogs. I am telling you to go do something. Or a lot of times you'd leave the you out of it and you just say walk the dogs. Right? And it's clear that I'm directly speaking to you. And in Latin, we have commands in independent clauses that use the subjunctive mood. The first one you've already learned, it's hortatory subjunctives. It's first person commands in independent clauses that use the subjunctive, let us walk the dogs. And jussive, you remember it's that polite kind of command. It's third person commands in independent clauses that use the subjunctive moods. So let them walk the dogs, right? It's this polite, let them do it. Now, an indirect command is another use of the subjunctive that's used in a dependent clause. And an indirect command uses the subjunctive in that dependent clause. You begged me to walk the dogs. It's not a direct command, but remember, I'm sort of reporting indirectly what you asked me to do. It's not a direct quote. That's why it's an indirect command. You begged me to walk the dog. All right, and an indirect command conveys a command introduced by a verb of asking, advising, begging, encouraging, ordering, but not directly, praying, or telling. And the dependent clause after an indirect command is introduced by an ut. An ut is a positive command. So you'll always know that there's a clause here. You always know that there's some kind of command or some kind of clause coming up because it either be introduced by an ut, which is a positive command, or a ne, which is a negative command. And on page 35, if you go look, I do a review of all the ut and ne clauses so that you can kind of see which one is which, because there's a lot of different ways that ut and ne are used. Okay, now we're just talking about indirect command. All right, so we've just talked about primary sequence. Make sure you've watched that video first because this uses primary and secondary sequences. So if the verb in the main clause is from the primary sequence, then the verb in the dependent clause will be a present subjunctive. If the verb, and here we got primary sequence, remember is our present, future, or future perfect, and in the secondary sequence it's imperfect, perfect, or pluperfect. If the verb in the main clause is from the secondary sequence, then the verb in the dependent clause will be the imperfect subjunctive. Okay, it's easy. We're only working with two subjunctives, present, and of course the world's easiest to form, imperfect subjunctives, okay? There's no difference in English between primary and secondary sequence sentences. There is a difference. It depends on whether or not the person being ordered is the same as the subject of the subjunctive verb. So, ut introduces a positive command. It commands to do something, and it translates as that or to. So I'm going to show you. So here we've got primary sequence because beg. Beg is in the primary. It's present tense, right? So what we're going to do is we have a positive command because we have an ut right here, right? And so what we're going to do is translate it. We're going to have a present subjunctive right there. You beg me to walk the dogs. And this is a dependent clause because you beg me, I could put a period right there, right? I could put a period there, would be the end of the sentence. The whole clause is to walk the dogs, right? It's an implied you, and it's got a verb, to walk the dogs. Okay, that's the command part of it. So, primary sequence, present subjunctive, positive command. Now, ne introduces a negative command, and it commands us not to do something. And you translate it as that, ellipsis not, or not to. So let's take a look at this one. We see it's a secondary sequence because we've got begged, which is a perfect, right? So here again, may or wisty. We have this in the perfect. Well, this was in the present. You begged me, and then here we have the ne because it's a negative command. So that already clues you how you should do it. Me or wisty ambularem. So what we've done is we've put this in the imperfect subjunctive. So This doesn't anything look like the imperfect at all, does it? It didn't say you begged me not to be walking the dogs, right? Not to walk the dogs. You just have to know if it's secondary sequence, it goes to the imperfect. If it's primary sequence, it takes the present. That's all. That's the only two that you have to know. All right. So 2 verbs that don't use this construction to indicate a direct command are ubio and weto. They use an infinitive. Okay, so you just need to remember that. That is in your chart book when you're working on this. They use an infinitive. See how we use the infinitive in English, and we do not. This is not an infinitive in Latin. In English, we do. Verbs of wishing, such as volo and nolo, can either use a subjunctive or an infinitive. And some verbs trigger indirect commands that take the person ordered in the dative, accusative, or a or ob plus the ablative. So these verbs right here, monio, monere, monitus, oro, orari, owari, oratus, rogo, rogari, rogari, rogatus, those take the accusative. They will ask us, and here we go in the accusative. Okay, so here's an example. Canem rogawi ut sederet. I ordered the dog to sit, right? They would take, here we go. We need to take the accusative. So ut sederet stays the same. I'm giving you 3 different words to order here, rogawi, mandawi, and petiwi, just to show you 3 different ones that use. In the date, there's some that take the dative, persuadio, impero, and mando. So he ordered us. So you can think of those verbs. It's basically he gave an order to us, right? It takes the dative. And here we have the dative down below. Kani mandawi ut sederet. I ordered the dog to sit. Guess what? In the English, it's exactly the same, because in the English, we use the infinitive. In the Latin, we don't. And then the last one is the one that takes a or ob plus the ablative, peto, quaero, or postulo. You ask of us, or you ask us. Again, this takes the ablative. So a plus the ablative is akenai. This is the ablative. Petiwi ut sederet. I ordered the dog to sit. Okay, so if you want to take a look, be sure to use page 30 and 31. 31 will give you a summary of all the subjunctives using ut and ne, and until you get really familiar with them, it will help you sort them all out.